Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. I'm your host, Naresh Vissa, with my co-host, Adam Schrader, and we have with us today a former two-time National Salesperson of the Year. He's developed corporate sales training programs in two different industries. He's a founder and president of Business LockerRoom. It's a business performance improvement company. He's co-founder of Counter Mentors. He has his own bi-weekly video podcast. And he's the best-selling author of the book, Counter Mentor Leadership, How to Unlock the Potential of the Four-Generation Workplace, which was the 2018 Gold Medal Axiom Business Book Award winner. And the reason why we're bringing him on is to talk about good qualities to lead organizations, especially work from home, digital organizations, but also because now age doesn't matter when it comes to the workforce. Age is just irrelevant. It's not even a number anymore. It's all about results. So no matter how old you are, you're going to have to learn how to work with people of all ages in the business world and even outside of the business world. And Kelly Riggs is our guest. He wrote the book on kind of ageless wisdom in the workplace. So Kelly, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Hey, it is great to be with you guys. And for complete transparency, that particular book I actually co-wrote with my millennial snowflake son.
Everybody always calling us the snowflakes.
Well, hey, look, I'm the old guy. I got to get a few shots in because I'm going to take a beating here soon.
Well, I will say this. I'm a millennial, and I am not a snowflake, and I don't think I've ever been called I'm the anti-snowflake. So
that's great.
So, Kelly, let's get the discussion started by first talking about the quarantining period, the lockdowns, shutdowns, the pandemic, and how that's affected business in general, and what you think are good qualities of what I call pandemic leadership.
Well, I love the term, and every time there's something different that happens in the workplace, no matter what it is. You go back to 2008 when we had the recession. You look at anything that happens that impacts society or the workplace. Suddenly there's a rush to find a leadership style or a leadership idea that really makes sense for that. I would suggest to you that leadership, effective leadership, is good regardless. And just add the three dots after that. Good leadership, great leadership traits work regardless. Pandemic leadership, again, I love the idea, really reveals a lot of the weaknesses of ineffective leadership, because those leaders who've not developed good relationships with their people in the office, when they're working from home, it's just going to be that much more difficult, that much more stilted in terms of interactions and trying to have those conversations. We didn't have them in the office before. It's really difficult to have them over Zoom. And by the way, old boomer boss, we call him the boss in the book, boomer old school supervisor. He's struggling to figure out how to use Zoom in the first place. Meanwhile, the millennials, in Starbucks on the app, the Zoom app on their iPhone, or in the absence of, or when there's, social distancing and all that, maybe they're just out on their back patio, but they're really struggling with that. The challenge with pandemic leadership is suddenly trying to become emotionally intelligent when you weren't before. It's suddenly trying to become empathetic about the new reality when you never really struck anyone as empathetic before. I think in any form of leadership, communication and the ability to interact with people is absolutely critical. And what the pandemic has done is really highlight the challenges that are associated with that if you were never any good at it in the first place.
I like that. Now, one of the things, a lot of our listeners are either their own business owners or they might be middle managers and dealing with leading people that way. Now, during the time leading up to the pandemic, everything was pretty good. And so you can think you're a good leader just because your group is doing well, whenever they might be succeeding despite you. So how can you tell going into this whether or not your team is doing well because of your leadership, or if your team is doing well in spite of your leadership? What are some of the things you can look at to see which one you are?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I think the litmus test is if you can't take a vacation, you have a problem. Most leaders, they're stuck in this scenario where they're indispensable, but they've made themselves the bottleneck inside the organization. They have to solve all the problems, make all the decisions, make sure everybody's staying up to speed and doing the things that they need to do. Or you've got the polar opposite. You've got the hands-off leader who's basically not even involved other than having a title and some office hours. And that one's a pretty easy one, right? I mean, most people can look at that and realize that if you're non-existent as a leader, you typically aren't keeping good players. You typically have very sporadic results. The one that really fools people is when you're the former type of leader, you've become the bottleneck. You create great results. In fact, it's one of the questions that we often ask the groups that we train or consult with or work with. Can you be a micromanager? Can you be a dictator, a tyrant, and be successful in the workplace? And the answer is absolutely yes. There's no doubt about it. It's not a good form of leadership, but it is a form of leadership. But what happens with tyrants, micromanagers, is because they don't empower and they don't allow people to grow and make their own decisions and create some autonomy for them, they begin to have a lot of turnover issues. And so one of the first things we look at is turnover issues inside of a particular team or department or a company. We also look at the quality of conversations that they're having. Inside Counter Mentors, the Counter Mentor Leadership book, we advocate the one-on-one, a very specific templated type of one-on-one meeting weekly with direct reports. And those people that undertake that particular kind of meeting just come back with their mouths open, say, hey, let me tell you something, this is a game changer for us. I mean, it's improved every aspect of what we do. But if that initial set of one-on-one meetings results in a lot of staring at each other and not a whole lot of conversation, that's also a pretty good clue that you don't have the kind of relationship that's going to perpetuate those results. So again, I think a micromanager can fool himself or herself into thinking they have a great team and great leaders. And really all they are is a self-limiting team of one. They just have a bunch of assistants working for them rather than leading a team or a group to high performance.
Well, you bring up some really excellent points that I want to discuss. And I think one of the things, talking about micromanagement and micromanagers, I've never really understood why a manager or a business owner or an entrepreneur would want to micromanage. And maybe it's because I'm lazy. I hire people so they can do the work, and so I can focus on other things and do other things. And it's kind of funny because I was interviewed on a podcast called the Lazypreneurs Show, and the philosophy behind this podcast is that you should get maximum return by putting in minimal amount of work. And the micromanagers who I've worked with, whether my business has worked with them or when I used to be a full-time employee, it's almost like these guys never slept, guys and girls. They never slept because they were just constantly micromanaging. And many of them were founders of companies. And I'm thinking, isn't the point of starting a business, at least my goal in starting a business is to one day fire myself as a CEO or as an executive so that I can hand it off to somebody. You brought up that you have a son, but I would love to hand it off to somebody or hand it off to a well-built company so that I can take a step back and contribute in other ways or focus on other things.
Naresh, that's adorable. you're so unique. I mean, it's so different because, I mean, the average person who winds up in a position of leadership, it's a really great question that you're asking, a really great sort of perspective and thought process, because it's a systemic problem. I want you to think about the workforce and the people that we typically promote to leadership. Not all the time, but the big part of the bell curve, most of the people that get promoted in leadership into management positions are those who have been really good at getting things done. They get noticed, they get things done, they're good, they have drive, they have initiative, and they have a lot of self-confidence in their ability to do things well. And so typically they don't require a whole lot of hand-holding, just kind of get out of my way and let me do my thing. And as executives in a company or owners in a company, we look at somebody like that and go, wow, that person would make a great leader. Now, here's where it gets dicey, because we promote them to management, but we forget to tell them, hey, by the way, your role is going to change. You're not a doer anymore. Getting things done is not your primary role. Getting things done through other people is your primary role. So you become more coach, facilitator, teacher, and of course, mentor. And it doesn't mean you don't make decisions or, that you don't delegate some responsibilities. But most people walk into a management position thinking, I got promoted because I'm good at what I do. I'm probably better than most. I mean, it's not that arrogant sort of self-talk. It's just reality. I'm probably better than most in the room, and that's why they picked me. So my job is to do more of the same. And you'd be surprised at how many times we have conversations with managers who say, when I was an employee, I just said, I wish my boss would let me do my job, and I wish my boss would give me some space and allow me to grow and all that. And then they become leaders, managers inside of the workforce. And within a few months, they're saying things like, you just can't find good people anymore. Or, people just don't want to work. Well, that sort of stifling control, which is oftentimes a part of the personality style, just simply continues, to make its way down their journey. And people begin to get out of the way, because if the boss will do it for them, then they just do it for them. So it's exactly. A really interesting thing. But you're very unique. I think most people get great satisfaction out of the control, out of creating the results, and that's why they enjoy it.
Well, as a follow-up, when I think of some of these micromanagers that I've worked with, again, either as an employee or that my company has worked with, these are individuals, you absolutely, you were spot on in what ended up happening. So the turnover, I mean, I'm talking like 70 to 80% year over year turnover.
Sure.
Because the employees are basically like, I can get paid more money to actually do something and grow and further my career elsewhere. And so, I mean, legitimately 80% of a company that I'm thinking about, their workforce did exactly that, and they moved on. They basically used the company as a stepping stone to negotiate higher salaries and to get better jobs.
Absolutely.
That certainly happened. But as a consult, our company was consulting for them, and it's almost like they were just wasting money, not just on us paying my company, paying us, but I would say the 80% of the people who ended up leaving, it was wasted salary, because they, at the end of the day, they couldn't really do anything. It's almost like they were being paid to just tell the CEO or the founder, oh, you're right. Yeah, good idea. You're right. You're doing a good job. And that's what he was paying. And it was investor money. It wasn't, the company was owned by like a larger corporation, so it wasn't his money. And
sure,
that's a way.
Shocker, right? Sometimes these, founders of companies or whomever, sometimes they have egos. Wow. It's that's part of the deal, right? A lot of times starting my own company, not only do I not necessarily want to work for other people, but many times I want to be in control. I want to call the shots. I want to be recognized for what I do. Being an effective leader is an exercise in humility. Leadership is an other people exercise. It's about lifting others up. It's about growing others. It's about developing others. It's about allowing others to use their talents to multiply what you're capable of doing. And a lot of people just cannot either make that transition or Worse, far worse in my book, we don't train them, because leadership is a set of skills. I mean, the born leader idea is a misnomer in a big way. We can teach anyone how to be an effective leader. Now, some will be far better than others because their emotional intelligence levels are far higher. But here's the really good news is if you want to improve your emotional intelligence, you can do that too. So you can do great work, be a great doer, and still transition into being a great leader, but it's a decision you have to make.
Well, I don't know if you've done research on this. You did write several books on this topic, but this is just an opinion. I could be completely wrong, but I truly, truly do believe that leadership traits and leadership qualities are passed down when people are children, when they're 5 years old, 6 years old, because I think about my own life, and when I decided I wanted to be a leader and I wanted to think outside the box, and when I wanted to become an entrepreneur, and I just think back and back and back, and if I can pinpoint, those small little influences I had in my life, it goes way back to early childhood. What do you have to say about that?
Oh, I 100% agree. Although I would add this caveat, that's not the only way to get to leadership. A lot of people are blessed in the sense that they've either worked for a good leader and had it modeled for them, or they grew up in a family with strong parental leadership and had it modeled for them. But there are some people who never get any of those things. There are some people who learn leadership on the sports field. They get a great coach, a great teacher in school. There's a lot of paths to get there, but I think the really good news for anyone is that you're capable of being a good leader if you can learn the skills that are associated, the practical, tactical, everyday skills associated with leadership. It doesn't mean you'll be the best leader ever, but you certainly can learn it. And even more importantly, if you can develop your emotional intelligence, and research says that we can, then you can improve even further. But I 100% agree with you. I think a lot of people, let's not say a lot, there is a subsection of people who come out of a family situation or, as a young person, whether it's a grandparent or something like that, they're exposed to those things and they stick.
One of the things you talked about in one of your answers a minute ago was something that I completely agree with, and that's that just because you're a good team member doesn't mean you're going to make a good team leader. And
Absolutely.
That's, as a business owner, though, it can be so easy to say, well, Kelly is such a good team member. I want to promote him because he's doing such a great job. I think I'll just make him the leader. What can you do to people or for people to make sure that whenever you do promote them and you make them the team leader, that they're actually able to succeed, that you're giving them the tools that they need to succeed?
Absolutely. I think the biggest mistake that companies make, promotion without preparation. We look around the room and we see people who are great. And I was Exhibit A in the bio that you were reading to start the show. 2-time National Salesperson of the Year. I was very, very successful as a salesperson. My company did what everybody did. They came to me and said, hey, we have an opening for regional sales manager. We want you to take that slot. And of course, my ego said, of course I have to take this. It's the next step. It's moving up the corporate ladder. And I took it. Now, in my case, guys, we had a substantive leadership program developed for people like me who were promoted. It went something like this. Good luck. That was it.
That's a pretty prevalent.
You're regional manager. Good luck. That's all I got. And I was a very good salesperson, and I was a terrible, terrible manager. Had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to hire, didn't know how to identify, acquire, retain talent, didn't know how to coach, mentor, or didn't know how to communicate well. But what I did know how to do was sell. And so what a lot of salespeople do who get promoted is they keep doing what they've always done, right? They've been great at that role, so they play that role. I think the most important thing that any company can do is not to say, well, great doers don't make great leaders. It's to say, great doer may or may not be a great leader. What we've got to do is assess them before we promote them. We've got to train and develop them before we promote them, perhaps put them in a temporary leadership position or two, maybe head up a subcommittee or, a working group or something like that, and observe them and see what their skills are, give them some real world feedback. But this simply promoting people because they're great doers is a train wreck in the workplace.
One of the things that you can do then is you can either choose to promote from within or go outside and get another, a person who's proven they can do it somewhere else. Which one do you find it's effective to bring somebody in from outside, or is it kind of better for company morale to promote from within and spend the time training?
Well, from my perspective, that's very much situation dependent. Sometimes you need the outside person because they bring a set of skills or a body of knowledge or something that you need into the company that you don't have. Sometimes for, as you mentioned, morale purposes, we've got 2, 3, 4 people who are certainly capable, and we want to become known as people who develop people from within and promote them. I think that depends on each individual situation, and there's just a set of complex variables that you have to look at. But I will say this, I think any company has to become an education facility. I think that any company that's going to be successful for the long haul and in a big way today is going to take talent and develop it. And it's going to continue to create a path and a track for people to move. What we know from research is that one of the big drivers of employee engagement is the ability to be challenged and the ability to develop my career. And when I know my boss cares about my career and my career development, it greatly increases my level of engagement. So I want to stay. I want to continue to work in those sets of circumstances. When you talk about employee engagement, Gallup will tell you that when you have highly engaged workplace with highly engaged employees, it takes as much as 20 or 25% increase in salary to lure them away from you. So when you're actually educating, training, and developing your people, it's good business. But Gallup will also tell you that if they're not engaged, as derived from an empirical assessment that people do, employee engagement surveys, those who are not engaged, they'll leave for just about anything because they want to go to work for good, strong leaders. Great players want to play on great teams, and they want to play for great leaders. And if you're not one, your people will begin to check out over time, and you'll experience a great deal of turnover.
Well, I've noticed through experience that there are 2 qualities that are important to being a great leader. And maybe you can add more to this, but what I've learned is you've got to have kind of that business corporate personality or background, or you have to be an innovator. And I found that generally leaders that I've worked with, they only fall into one of these brackets. So they might have invented something, or they may have started something, but they're just not innate corporate business types of people. But then on the other side, you have those corporate business types of people who are all about the spreadsheets and the numbers, and they treat the business or the employees like numbers really at the end of the day, but they don't have much on the innovation side. And I think the important thing is finding leaders or developing yourself to become a leader so that both can be strengths of yours. And if you look at someone like Steve Jobs was on the innovator side, and he was not that corporate business type of guy, which is why he ended up getting fired from Apple during the 80s. And then when he came back, he built up Pixar and did a few other ventures. When he came back to Apple, he had built up that corporate business side and helped turn Apple into one of the 2 largest companies in the world that it is today.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really interesting because, as we talked about earlier, we put a great deal of emphasis on competency inside of your role. I mean, it's very tough to come in as a leader if you're not competent in whatever skill or expertise or whatever your department requires. For example, I'm not going to be a very effective sales manager if I don't know something about the product that we sell, because when people need help, they're not going to come to me. So there's a certain level of competency that's just absolutely non-negotiable. But do you have to be the smartest guy in the room to be a great leader? The answer, I think, is absolutely not. Can you be a great leader and not be an innovator? I think you made that point, and that's clear. No, you don't have to be. But the people that really do well in business are the people that understand people. As much as I hate to admit it, because you look at my DISC profile, my entire DISC profile is all task driven. I'm a get it done kind of guy. But if I'm going to be effective getting things done through other people, then I have to have an understanding and an empathy for people, and I have to learn how to communicate well with them and deal with people who are imperfect and oftentimes unforgiving. I mean, it's coming out of college, I thought business was simply about being the best person in that area, whatever it is, and they'll have to promote me. But I looked around and began to see people going by me who weren't nearly as good as I was technically or from a competence standpoint, but they just did a lot of other things really, really well on the people side. And what I realized, and by the way, this is borne out in recent research that was published in Harvard Business Review. They went to 65,000 employees and asked them, is your boss results oriented or people oriented? And then they said, question number 2, is your boss a good leader? Well, when they took the group that said my boss is results oriented, they were considered to be a good leader by the employee 14% of the time. Now that gives you a sense of how rare really good leaders are, right? 14% of the time, my boss is results oriented, 1 out of roughly 7 considered to be a good leader. But when they went to the people and said, no, my boss is a people person, let me ask you guys, what percentage of people said my boss is a good leader if they were considered to be a people-focused leader?
I would guess about 50 to 55%.
Naresh?
I would guess something similar.
Well, you're both very, very close. The answer was 12%.
Wow.
12%. When I first read the research, I went, what? No, wait, hang on, what now? But it said, look, people-focused leaders are only about the people. I mean, the kind of people you'd love to go have a beer with. They're great to get along with. Everybody enjoys being around them. But when you really got a real question or need some real competency in terms of help, you go to somebody else because, although he or she's a good person, they don't really do everything I need to. But here's where it gets interesting. Same study, there was a subset of people that said, no, my boss is actually both. My boss is very much results focused, but very much people focused at the same time. When that was the case, those people reported that their boss was a good leader 74% of the time.
That's
I'm
no statistician, but that's higher than 12, right?
Yeah, it's higher than 12. Yeah, it absolutely is. What it means is if you're really great at getting things done, if you can learn the people side too, the chances you become a great leader, jump by a factor of 6. But here's the payoff pitch in the whole study. What was the percentage of employees that reported that their boss was both people focused and results focused as well? What do you think?
5, if they're lucky.
1%.
Like I said in the lead up to this question, it's hard to find both. So yeah, I'd 1%. Say less than 5.
It was less than 5. 1%, right?
Yep.
1%. Think about
that.
65,000 employees, and only 650 said my boss is both. But when they were both, almost 3/4 of them said my boss is a great leader. There's more to being a great leader than just getting the job done. If you have people working for you and you're not developing them, your good players are going to leave because they want to flourish. They want to grow. They want autonomy. They want to make decisions. So you have a choice. You can either learn the people skills or you can become a micromanager and get ulcers. Your choice.
We're going to stop there for today. Thank you very much, Kelly Riggs, for joining us. Again, everybody, Kelly is the former 2-time National Salesperson of the Year. He is the best-selling author of Counter Mentor Leadership, How to Unlock the Potential of the 4-Generation Workplace, which has won the 2018 Gold Medal Axiom Business Book Award. Check out Kelly's website, www.countermentors.com and www.bizlockerroom.com. That's countermentors.com and bizlockerroom.com. Don't forget to check us out, www.workfromhomeshow.com. That's workfromhomeshow.com. You can also send us an email with any questions you have, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. That's hello@workfromhomeshow.com. Kelly will be rejoining us next episode. So until next time, keep on working from home.